I want to know, can you show me something's familiar about these strangers like me? Tell me more, please show me something's familiar about these strangers like me. What is up, everyone? It's Adventurous after dark. We got some stuff and some things to share with you. You know how it is. That's what we do on this channel. Mason left us a good night card, which was, just the sweetest thing.
The sweetest thing ever. Gonna watch this in the morning.
That British son of a gun. Alrighty, so
he's like, obviously I'm not here right now because I'm asleep. No shit.
You don't say.
You don't
past
say.
Mason to future us. But future us is actually current us, so I'm not going down that rabbit hole.
Wibbly wobbly, timey-wimey shit.
So, on the menu tonight, everyone, we have Blurry by Mason in the Dark for Prose Police. That's going to be good. We got some Rebel Poet Society, and we're going to quote the Raven, nevermore. We got an installment of authortube news, and not a lot to talk about, but a little to talk about, so we're going to talk about it. We got a segment of how would you describe that, because I'm always up for a challenge. And finally, at the end, as usual, we are a genius with our topical fucking topic of the night. As you do.
Yes.
Right. Can you really teach anyone to write? But can you really?
Yeah. Can you really teach anyone?
Yes. That is the question. That is the question. Thank you for restating it, Kate.
No, I mean, it changes on inflection, though.
Does it?
Yeah.
But before all of that, how are you today?
Oh, I'm good. I'm good.
Good.
I've been working on some stuff.
Yeah, you've been working on some things,
particularly The World Next Door.
Nice.
So I'm very excited.
I'm excited for that too.
Yes.
Alrighty. So I think without further ado, to do whichever the word is.
Yes.
I don't know French. We're gonna get into Prose Police, Mason in the Darks, Blurry.
Bad prose, what you gonna do when the Prose Police are coming for you? Bad prose.
Alrighty. Alright, so this is the prologue for an upcoming novel that Mason is currently working on. I don't want to say any kind of timeline because he has no idea when he's going to get it done, but this is something he will eventually publish.
Yes.
Okay. Prologue. It was being thrown face first down into the foul-smelling mud with a squelch that did it. A fire ignited. A vicious, snarling beast rose up inside his chest. It clawed at his insides and screamed, "Don't you take this shit anymore. Later, he wouldn't be able to clearly recall pushing himself up onto his hands and knees or spitting out the mouthful of dirt. Its awful taste still lingering on his tongue. Burning hatred for the boys consumed him as he watched their blurry forms casually walk away across the field towards the school's main building. Their derisive laughter ringing in his ears. Cowards. They were nothing but sniveling fucking cowards with no honor, no integrity, no sense of common decency whatsoever. How many times had this happened? Lenny had lost count at this point. They hated him just because he was different. They thought these differences made him weak, an easy target. In a way, Lenny thought they were right, because he had been weak, hadn't he? How many times was he going to let them get away with this before he plucked up the courage to stand up for himself? Not even one more time. This was it. So let's dig in. That's quite a bit of meat right there.
Mm-hmm.
You want to start, Caitlin, or should I?
You can start.
Okay. So there's something I'm noticing with this, and me and Mason have this in common. Lots of commas.
Yes.
My editor would yell at me, but I write exactly like this. It was being thrown, comma, face first, comma.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if I had to guess, I would say writers like me and Mason do that because we want to emphasize the face first.
Mm-hmm.
So we separate it from everything else so that it's in its own little space because it's supposed to be emphasized. A lot of editors will get on your case about that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that most of the time they have a point.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes you got to put your foot down as a writer and say, no, fuck you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in that case, if an editor got onto you for that, I would question their skills just a teensy-weensy bit. Simply because the way that it's separated out, it was being thrown face down in the mud. Yeah, you said into the foul-smelling mud.
Well, it was being thrown face first down into foul-smelling mud.
Well, there was a reason I was separating it out, because you could move that.
What do you mean?
Like, it could be there or it could be there or it couldn't. Is what I'm saying. Like, you could move it to another part.
You could, but I think it makes the most impact where it is.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I'm not saying he should move it. I'm just saying that the way that it's structured, it having the commas is appropriate because it could be moved.
Okay. Okay. Now, this next part kind of leaves me personally with a question. He says, foul-smelling mud.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as someone who has done a fair bit of gardening, and by that I mean we literally had a backyard garden where we grew food that routinely lasted us, for at least a year. We would can it and, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Mud usually doesn't smell bad.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious why the mud smells bad. And I know I probably won't get an answer because it's a seemingly innocuous detail. But as a reader who has some, these days, what could be considered niche experience as someone who's actually got his hands in the mud and farmed, this is that raises a question for me. But that's going to be 1 in 100 readers that would think that, if that many.
Yeah. I guess it would depend on the location of the mud. really. Like,
Well,
how urban is the setting?
We get more of an idea of the rough setting, even where we stopped. So you kind of get the idea that this is like a school field, like maybe a soccer field or something like that. And that really makes you question why the mud is stinky.
Yeah.
Okay. We have this line right here, a fire ignited, period. I think personally I would have made that period a comma and said a fire ignited, comma, a vicious snarling beast rose up inside his chest, period. It's not bad as it is, but we just got into this. So having that short sentence immediately, it just doesn't do it for me. And I can't quite explain why. I think that might be a reader's taste thing.
Yeah.
But it just doesn't do it for me. It's not bad. It's purely a taste thing. A vicious snarling beast rose up inside his chest. I'm good there. No problems there. It clawed at his insides and screamed, "Don't you take this shit anymore." I like that. Caitlin, feel free to jump in anytime you want to and, stop me.
Yeah.
Later, he wouldn't be able to clearly recall pushing himself up onto his hands and knees or spitting out the mouthful of mud and dirt, its awful taste still lingering on his tongue. Okay. So, other than the typo here where later isn't capitalized, and I can't give Mason shit on minute detail. Oh, and actually there's a period after. So there's punctuation and capitalization issues, but he's also blind. So I'm not going to give him shit, especially when I do the same kind of shit sometimes.
Which, of course, Mason's going to be like, but you can see, so what's your excuse?
Exactly. Yeah, I got stupid finger syndrome when I type.
Here's my blood and bone
pokies. So later, he wouldn't be able to clearly recall pushing himself up onto his hands and knees or spitting out the mouthful of dirt. Other than needing a comma right there at knees, that section's really, really good. Because so what we do, we immediately set up with the later, that one word sets us up that we need to keep in mind that we're in past tense context.
Yeah.
And so that gives us tense. It's a reinforcement of tense from the first sentence here. And I don't know, there's just something about knowing that this is something that's past, but still hearing how strong the language is. It's really doing a good job of conveying just how important and serious of a memory this is to the narrator.
Yeah. Well,
go ahead.
Because I think the thing is the fact that he's writing in third person close, and all of the language is very vigorous and concise.
I'm not sure if I would say all of it is concise. It is definitely vigorous.
Yeah.
Yeah, because, I mean, he wouldn't be able to clearly recall pushing himself up. He could have, if he wanted to be concise, he could have completely cut out onto his hands and knees. He could have completely cut that out, and it wouldn't have changed the meaning at all. But he adds those words in there because it strengthens the mental image.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I wouldn't call it concise, but I would call it very gripping and vigorous.
I guess what I was looking for is it doesn't seem like anything is in here without purpose.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Every word is, there's no wasted language. I'd agree with that. Or spitting out the mouthful of dirt, its awful taste still lingering on his tongue. Now that is again really gripping in the sense that if you've had dirt in your mouth, you know how vile that sensation and taste is.
Yeah.
And if you haven't, it kind of begins to make you try to imagine it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, as
Either
someone who's
way,
had dirt in
it's
their mouth, let me tell you, it's rough.
Yeah, it's quite disgusting.
Burning hatred for the boys consumed him as he watched their blurry forms. Now here, he uses the word blurry, and we know that's the name of the story.
Yeah.
And that I don't think for a second that's accidental.
No.
And I would anticipate that that word would probably and should probably show up many more times in the story.
Yeah.
Because it is a story about a visually impaired person.
Yeah.
And blurry is such a simple word, but such a descriptive word. Because everyone knows what blurry, if you speak this language, you know what blurry means. It's universally understood.
Yeah.
And it's so simple, yet so hard hitting. Because talk about humans are visual creatures by and large. You can't see, it's distressing. And so when you describe a visual as being blurry, it triggers an empathy response almost immediately. So that's good.
Yeah.
Applying of simple language to form that empathy response in your readers is always good shit. Across the field towards the school's main building, and that's where we get the idea that they're in a schoolyard that I was talking about.
And we have a person.
We have a person?
We have a person.
Okay.
This person says, it is a Lion of Liberty. He says, you two streamed the write-in, right? Hello again. Hello again.
Yes, we do stream the write-in as well, sir. And we're thinking about starting to do those daily and longer on Twitch. We're working out the details on that, but it's in discussions. So yes, welcome to the show, sir. Or ma'am, the name doesn't really make it clear.
Well, I mean, the artwork in the profile pic, it looked like a dude, so
yeah, that's fair. I'm not looking at it right now, though.
No.
And I didn't immediately remember. Anywho, their derisive laughter ringing in his ears. Cowards. That's good.
Yeah.
That's really good.
Yeah, because it really, I love how very, what is the word I'm looking for? This has a lot of sensory aesthetic.
Yeah, that's good.
So,
that's a good description of that.
It's like it immediately immerses you in the situation.
Yes.
So, in a sense, it's kind of like bringing forward that sort of old romantic era style into somewhat of a modern format, in the sense that, he uses stuff like, foul smelling mud, or, use of the word blurry, or
yeah, he augments his descriptions with a phrase or word that directly correlates to a sense. He doesn't just use words that represent abstracts. He uses words that have very literal, real-world meanings to modify his descriptions. I agree with that. And yeah, that is something of a classic literature / romance era literature thing. And I hadn't thought about that before, but you're right.
Yeah.
But yeah, derisive laughter ringing in his ears, and then cowards is separated by itself, which is a good choice. Really emphasizing these are little bastard cowards. It's good. That they were nothing but sniveling fucking cowards with no honor, no integrity, no sense of common decency whatsoever. Which I like that. That's just so visceral. You get how much this person hates these little bastards. It's so good. Now, I do want to get to more of this. So I think I don't need to analyze literally every fucking word. I would like to at least get through this paragraph. Jesus. Okay.
Yeah.
So
Even
to pick
though
up where I left
could
off reading,
analyze every word though.
we could. Not even one more time. This was it. The beast in his chest let out a defiant roar of approval, and, almost as if nature itself was answering its call, the air was filled with low, rolling thunder. Ooh, that's good.
I like how like the weather mirrors the goings on.
Exactly. That's that good shit. I love that shit.
It's like, oh yes.
After that, everything was chaos. The ground flew by as his feet propelled him forward. I like that. The ground flew by, especially when you put this in the context of his blurry vision. Imagine how that would be like almost surreal for the person experiencing it.
Yeah.
Sprinting towards his tormentors, tackling their leader. They both hit the wet earth with a thud. In that moment, nothing in the world could have stopped Lenny as he started to unload. Every blow was catharsis. It was therapy. It was a fuck you for every time they had mocked him, every stupid joke they'd ever laid about his wobbling eyes. Ever made about his wobbling eyes. Every rumor spread, remark made, person turned against him. Every single time they had pushed him, stuck out a leg to trip him, and spat at him. Emotion poured out of Lenny like a reservoir bursting through its dam. Tears of anger and sadness flowed down his cheeks. Hands tried to pull him away, but he didn't care. Panicked voices rose around him, but he didn't care. All Lenny wanted was to make Callum Radcliffe feel a fraction of the way he had felt for the last 3 years. Strong arms wrapped themselves around him, pulling him away, and he flailed wildly. Eventually, he managed to break free, and the next punch he threw connected with the jaw of the person attempting to restrain him. Everything became uncomfortably silent. Lenny couldn't see them. They were outside his limited field of vision, but he could tell the commotion had attracted a crowd of spectators. With a mounting sense of dread and anxiety, he stood staring at the man, the fully grown man that he'd just punched in the face, and his blood ran cold. This was not one of Callum's friends, and he knew whatever happened now, it wasn't going to be good. Worth.
Oh man, I love how the lead in when he talks about the blows and how they were were catharsis.
Every blow was catharsis. It was therapy. It was a fuck you for every time they had mocked him. And then the description of the mockery and the bullying that's happened over the years. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
like
very good writing.
You can literally feel the sensation for anybody who's had to punch things. Okay. You can definitely feel that. Plus, it's really strange too, because it has this sense of pain and just sadness and anger and all of this, but at the same time, the way that it's worded, it has all of this underpinning of just relief almost.
Yeah. Well, and I would even say triumph.
Mm-hmm.
To finally overcome something, a fear, to finally stand up for yourself. That is a moment of tremendous personal growth and achievement.
Mm-hmm.
And, for Lenny, this is a pivotal moment in his history.
Yeah.
This is the day he chose to stop being a victim.
Yeah.
And that's huge.
Yeah.
So yeah. But back to a more line by line.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the only thing I ever have to pick apart with Mason's writing is the punctuation, because everything else is so fucking good.
Yeah.
For every time they had mocked him, every stupid joke they had ever made about his wobbling eyes. Now that's an interesting word as a descriptive choice, wobbling eyes. It makes me curious about what his exact problem with his vision is. As a kid who had really bad lazy eye as a kid, I identify with that descriptor. So
Yeah.
that personally makes me think of lazy eye.
Mm-hmm.
Every rumor made, remark, every rumor spread, remark made, a person turned against him. Again, as a kid who was not popular with other kids, man, that just resonates.
But as somebody who did know someone, this person was old though, and they started losing their vision. It was almost like their eyes were wandering all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
Almost like they were searching, but this person was blind, so it was like it was just pointlessly happening. So I don't know if that's what he means by wobbling.
I don't know. Maybe Mason can fill us in the comments tomorrow. Should I read some more, or should I finish analyzing what we already have read?
We could read some more.
There's a lot more. Yeah, I'm going to read this whole next paragraph and see if there's anything really interesting to dig to in this next paragraph.
Okay.
It turned out to be the headmaster, and what followed was a parade of disapproval and disappointment. Fuck him. That's not the story. I'm just saying, fuck him.
Right.
Mr. Edwards, the police, his mother, each one telling him that they expected better of him, hammering home how serious he could have injured Callum and how utterly irresponsible his attack had been. Didn't he know that violence was never the answer, except when it is?
Mm-hmm.
In the end, Callum's parents didn't press charges because Lenny's mother begged them not to. No amount of begging could change Mr. Edwards' mind, though. 3 years. 3 fucking years. That was how long Callum had made Lenny's life a living nightmare. No matter how many times he complained or asked for help, nothing ever happened. Nobody ever did anything about it. The worst punishment Callum ever received was detention, and that just made things worse. The fact Lenny had dared to breathe a word to anybody made them angry, and their abuse only increased in its intensity. 3 years of misery and 1 minute of fury was all it took for Lenny to be expelled. Nobody wanted to hear his side of the story. In their eyes, he was a pariah, a psycho, the rage-filled juvenile delinquent that had broken a fellow student's nose and knocked out one of his teeth. Shame you didn't break his eye socket. It even made local papers with a picture of Callum and his bruised face. The big, bad bully begging for sympathy. It should have been laughable, but Lenny seethed with a cocktail of bitter rage and shame. No matter how much they tried to make him, he refused to apologize. Lenny hated them all. The school, the other students, even his mother, Callum. He hated most of all because, after everything, that bastard had won. They had lied to him all his life. This was not a just world. Being thrown into the mud was the straw that broke the camel's back, the moment that had awoken the angry beast. But from that point on, it never left him. It never slept. It was always there, just beneath the surface, waiting for somebody to piss him off, to give it an excuse to bare its teeth at them. We'll learn the power of the dark side. That's the vibe in that whole paragraph. That's the vibe, dude. It's like, whoa, holy shit, man, we get it. Whoa.
Oh man.
Oh man, yeah, you can just feel the seething resentment and rage and bitterness through that whole. It's in every line.
Yeah.
Like right here.
Mm-hmm.
Hammering home how seriously he could have injured Callum and how utterly irresponsible his attack had been. Didn't he know that violence was never the answer? You could taste the bitter sarcasm,
Mm-hmm.
the inherent rebuke of the statement.
Yeah.
The narrator feels. It's, oh man, talk about empathy porn.
Right? Oh my god. And this could just be me, but this is like, it's a prologue that's written by somebody who writes fantasy, but it's written for more of a like contemporary urban type of sense, because you get all of this really great like poetic character setup before we get into like the showing part.
Mm-hmm.
Does it come across that way to you, or?
I personally wouldn't think of it that way, but I see what you mean.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I don't. When I hear people talk like this, I just see someone speaking with passion. I don't necessarily think of it in any special terms, like relating it to this or that. I just hear someone speaking passionately, intelligently from the heart. So I personally wouldn't make that connection, but I see what you're saying.
Well, I mean, because this part and all of the parts leading up to it, I mean, because we've gotten a lot of backstory.
Mm-hmm.
Even though it's been in a very short amount of time.
Right. And to your point about backstory, we get this. With 3 years. 3 fucking years.
Mm-hmm.
So up until now, we've gotten a lot of vague allusions to the scale of the problem.
Mm-hmm.
But then he has this line, 3 years, 3 fucking years. And he goes on to cite examples of things that have been going on. And with everything he says, it gets more and more justifiable what he did.
Mm-hmm.
The building, you hear, well, this one kid knocked another kid down and wailed on him until he broke his nose. Okay, that sounds pretty bad. But then you hear that the kid who got knocked down and had his nose busted did this and this and this and this, and these things kept repeating over a cycle of 3 years. You start to say, oh, so he totally fucking deserved it.
Mm-hmm.
So the piling on of reasons to empathize with Lenny is really good, especially because when we think about a kid being bullied, we have almost no upper limit on how angry we can get about it potentially.
Right.
So you can almost drone on about it ad nauseum and get away with it.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't care, but I'm saying you could if you wanted to.
Yeah.
3 years of misery, and what, especially when your language is this good. That's kind of the key factor in all of this. If your language sucked, it would get old pretty quick. But the language here is so colorful.
And this may be like kind of just like a non-writing situation, but this is just from like personal reader opinion here, and I may get faulted for this, but if I were Lenny's mom, I would not have made him. I would not have tried to force him to apologize.
Oh yeah, me either. If I was his dad, I'd have been like, "No, you did the right fucking thing."
Yeah.
If they press charges, we'll sue them. Like,
right.
Yeah. No, any decent parent would have been like, "Oh, you finally beat that little bastard up. Good job."
You're like, yay. Like, so correct.
Let's see if there's any. I don't think there's anything line by line. All right, let's do one more paragraph.
Okay.
And then we'll see if there's anything that I want to do a line by line or a quick zoom in on, and then we'll wrap up. For 2 months, Lenny's bedroom became both his prison cell and his sanctuary, the place nobody could get to him. The days crawled by one after another, and each was the same as the next. Okay, that right there. Whoo, boy, he is setting up a potential nightmare scenario, like how serial killers are made kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting that that's at the beginning of the paragraph and there's still so much writing left.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this just fills you with questions. Oh man, where is that going to go? How bad is this going to
get? And I like, in a way, how it's set up where it could go one of two ways.
Yeah, which we get to even before the end of this paragraph.
Yeah.
Nothing could rouse him from the depths he had sunk to. Nothing could bring down the walls he had thrown up around himself. Now that, I want to talk about that really quick. That's a good line to analyze. Or 2 lines, excuse me. It's 2 sentences. Nothing could rouse him from the depths he had sunk to. So we get descriptive language describing a sensation of sinking, falling. Obviously, it's a metaphor for depression.
Yeah.
And then nothing could bring down the walls he had thrown up around himself. So we have contrasting visualizations of movement.
Yeah.
But both of the metaphors work in tandem to describe this mounting state of psychological distress, borderline psychosis, where he is turning inwards on himself and getting worse by the day.
Yeah.
And that is just, like, in 2 sentences, it's just such a hard-hitting combo metaphor. It's really good.
Yeah. It just immediately resets. Well, not really resets, but just kind of compounds how dire everything has gotten.
A light had switched off behind those innocent eyes that were now filled with a hard, bitter resentment. May gave way to Jude, and the air became thick and muggy as summer arrived in full force. Outside, the world turned. The sound of ice cream vans and the screaming laughter of friends playing in the streets drifted in through the open window. Eventually, Lenny closed it and drew the curtains before flopping back onto his bed despondently. A news report was the thing that had offered a small ray of hope. The possibility of a new beginning. Okay, that's too much of a fucking edgelord cliffhanger. We're going to keep going. Cedar Heights High School, announced the clipped tones of the newsreader, filled with its customary tone of false saccharine brightness. In a bold move, Cedar Heights is attempting to take a pioneering step into the future with its headmaster, Roger Coulter, vowing to turn the school into a hug of diversity and equality. Lenny's mother increased the volume, but he watched with disinterest from his armchair in front of the television. It was one of the rare occasions his mother had managed to coax him out of his self-imposed isolation, and he didn't want to be there. It was just easier to give in. It was just easier to give in to her niggling. Okay, yeah, that
Yes.
is what. Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
it was easier to
Yeah.
give in to her niggling requests because all he wanted was an easy life, and if sitting silently in the living room made her leave him alone, then so be it. The camera cut to a shot of a horrifically ugly building. The exterior of the construction was made of vividly bright multicolored squares of blue, red, and green. Something a deranged toddler might throw together with Lego bricks if left unattended. The next shot was of somebody standing. Okay, that's why it confused me. No space. In front of the building, a close-up of their face revealed a bespectacled man with close cropped hair and a thin mustache. Okay, we're pushing 40 minutes, so we're gonna analyze what we've got. So
I love his usage of words like niggling and bespectacled.
mm-hmm. He definitely knows when to throw in those $5 words for sure.
Yeah. Niggling I would argue is like a $25 word because it's not used very often.
Yeah, that's fair. I can see the argument there. What I like is that we had so much darkness and so much rage and contempt.
Mm-hmm.
And then we slowly start to move out of that, and we get this. The mood shifts.
Yeah.
And it's very seamless. It's very gradual, but the mood shifts from that hot, ready to go contempt and rage into a more cooled off, depressed, stagnant bitterness, and then the possibility of a new beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And he starts talking about what's going on with the school.
Yeah.
And that immediately, again, oh, fucking hell, Zach. And that, again, immediately raises questions with the reader.
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay, what is exactly happening that's going to make things potentially better for this guy?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just a really good flow of story. And it's happening so quick.
Yeah.
But the language hits so hard that it doesn't feel like it's quick. It's gripping.
Yeah, because
you're there for every second of it.
Yeah, because you still get a sense that there's been quite a passage of time, but in a very short space.
Right. And he pulls that off with those hard-hitting, emotion-packed words.
Mm-hmm.
Eyes that were now filled with a hard, bitter resentment. That phrase right there.
Yeah.
Then he has this section here where he talks about outside the world turned, the sound of ice cream vans, screaming children, blah, blah, blah. And then eventually Lenny closed it and drew the curtains, further shutting himself off. And that is, of course, before we hear the thing about the possibility of a new beginning.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you said. It's like we said before. There is not a wasted word.
No.
There really is not a wasted word.
And I really like how everything exterior is mirroring everything interior.
Yes. It really serves to thematically unify it.
Yeah.
And it's what's good about it is that it's thematically unified and it's dramatic, but it's still 100% within the realm of possibility.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So we don't have to suspend our disbelief very much at all.
Mm-hmm.
And readers really like that when you don't ask for a huge suspension of disbelief and still give them something that's compelling and interesting.
Yeah.
Everyone likes that.
Yes.
Okay, so any thoughts you want to add before we wrap up, Kate?
Well, aside from the fact that I like how meaty it is in a very short space, but other than that.
Right.
So, what is the verdict?
Bellissimo, bellissimo, veramente.
Bellissimo. He is innocent. We're not going to charge you with anything.
In fact, somebody get this man the key to the city. Okay.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Let's go to the end of the segment, Stinger. This has been Prose Police, Mason in the Darks, Blurry. Go check him out after the stream. We will get him linked in the description. He's worth your attention and your subscription. Go check out Mason in the Dark.
Bad prose, what you gonna do when the prose police are coming for you? Bad prose.
Alrighty, we're on the comments here.
Yep.
YouTube stream, yes. Twitch for writers to stream, and they've since ditched it. Too bad. I met two wonderful authors there. Interesting. Maybe we'll bring it back.
Yeah. Is it still accessible to writers? As far as we know, yeah. Sniveling fucking cowards.
Cowards.
Yes.
Speed thing drunk. Considering they're little druids, you know.
Mm-hmm. In a long way, drunken person is trying to focus on something or someone as if to speak or examine. Hate to fly.
This person could learn a simple rule to make their writing much better. Show, don't tell.
Yeah.
Their writing is decent, but there are opportunities.
I would argue, though, this is a prologue. The telling happens in the actual, story part of it. So, I mean, the showing happens in the actual story part of it. So, this is setup.
Right. There is a lot of people have started writing prologues willy-fucking-nilly, and they don't actually treat them like a separate kind of writing. Yeah. Back in the day, it used to be understood that a prologue was distinctly different from the body of the work. You do a lot of setup and info dumping in prologues to be very direct and to the point, and then you save the more long-form showing and all of the specific scenes and anything else you want to highlight for the actual body of the work. So while I understand your point here, Lion, we do need to keep in mind that it is a prologue, and I think that the amount of telling there is still, I'm going to use the word, the amount of telling is acceptable, and for me, largely unnoticed because of how good the language is.
Yeah.
You have to remember that you can buy grace from your readers. If your writing is good enough, you can buy a lot of grace doing a lot of no-nos. That's where skill and pushing the envelope comes in.
Yeah. Some writers think they want to write it. That's not the point that I was making. The point that I was making was the fact that it sounded like someone who usually writes in the format of fantasy, but came over and is writing contemporary, as a way to say that it's good to mix flavors, especially when it comes to a story like Blurry. The way that the prologue was set up, I think that it was very good. That he usually lends his voice more towards a more romanticized sort of highly symbolic, fantastic tone for how much showing there actually was in the prologue in a very, very short space. Because we got the whole setup of him beating up the bullies and then his like complete descent into, depression and becoming completely despondent and isolating himself from, his mom and the rest of the world and all of that in just a very, very short amount of time. So because writing fantasy, you have to be a very highly visual writer.
Right.
So being able to come over and use that in a contemporary setting where you have all of that information to pack into a very short amount of time, it's a very useful skill. So I wasn't saying that at all that he was misgenred. I was saying the mixing of flavors was very good.
And I would agree. There are things in just about every genre, even the genres that I would argue kind of suck. There's still conventions and things that are commonly done in that genre that are universally appealing storytelling techniques.
Mm-hmm.
Like suspended misdirection, for example. This is something that he doesn't really do it in the writing we just saw, but he's very good at that technique.
Yeah.
People also might refer to it as red herring, where you lead the readers down this path, but it's actually this the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
That's commonly only used in thriller and crime mystery detective novels, but anywhere you can fit that in, it makes for good storytelling.
Yeah.
So mixing, I agree with your point, Kate, that mixing flavors is never a bad thing. Well, I won't say never. You have to do it right, but if you do it right, it's
you have to do it correctly. With prolonged bullying, sometimes retribution is the only thing they understand. Agreed.
Exactly.
This is only prologue. The showing will be in the... yes, precisely. Yeah.
I feel it.
For
That's
obvious
certainly
reasons.
a possibility.
Well, it's because, people don't understand that it means, like, to be poked or prodded.
A misunderstanding, then thanks for the writing talk. I forget to chat with other about writing. Thank you. Hey, you for sure have a good night as well. Stop back in when you have the time and come back and watch the replay if you got the time. We still got plenty of other ground to cover.
Yeah.
Plenty more ground to cover. Jesus, I can't talk tonight.
And we will make an announcement when the stuff is up on Twitch.
Yeah, when we start.
Come and hang out.
Alrighty. So we're gonna move on to Rebel Poet Society. And, we are going to quote the Raven.
Yes.
Nevermore. Alrighty. So we had some viewers request The Raven by Poe, and we haven't done a whole lot of analysis lately. We've been mostly just doing readings.
Mm-hmm.
It seems how this is such a widely recognized classic, this would be a good time to step back into our analysis format of doing Rebel Poet Society. So let us begin.
Mm-hmm.
The Raven by Edgar Allan Poe, as it appears in Classics Edgar Allan Poe collection. I don't know, by Flame 3. I don't know if houses ever take liberties with editing these things.
Yeah. And no, the stream is not over.
Okay, so The Raven by Edgar Allan Poe. Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered weak and weary over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore, while I nodded, nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping, as of someone gently rapping rapping at my chamber door. "'Tis some visitor," I muttered, tapping at my chamber door. Only this and nothing more. Ah, distinctly I remember, it was in the bleak December, and each separate dying ember wrought its ghost upon the floor. Eagerly I wished the morrow, vainly I had sought to borrow from my books surcease of sorrow, sorrow for the lost Lenore, for the rare and radiant maiden whom the angels named Lenore, nameless here forevermore. And the silken, sad, uncertain rustling of each purple curtain thrilled me, filled me with fantastic terrors never felt before, so that now, to still the beating of my heart, I stood repeating, "'Tis some visitor, entreating entrance at my chamber door. Some late visitor, entreating entrance at my chamber door. This is it, and nothing more." Presently my soul grew stronger, hesitating then no longer. "Sir," said I, "or madam, truly your forgiveness I implore, but the fact is I was napping, and so gently you came rapping, and so faintly you came tapping, tapping at my chamber door, that I scarce was sure I heard you. Here I opened wide the door. Darkness there, and nothing more." Deep into that darkness peering, long I stood there wondering, fearing, doubting, dreaming, dreams no mortal had ever dared to dream before. But the silence was unbroken, and the darkness gave no token, and the only word there spoken was the whispered word, "Lenore." This I whispered, and an echo murmured back the word Lenore. Merely this, and nothing more. Back into the chamber turning, all my soul within me burning. Soon I heard again a tapping, somewhat louder than before. "Surely," said I, "surely that is someone at my window lattice. Let me see then what thereat is, and this mystery explore. Let my heart be still a moment, and this mystery explore. 'Tis the wind and nothing more." Open here I flung the shutter, when, with many a flirt and flutter, in there stepped a stately raven of the saintly days of yore. Not the least obeisance made he, not an instant's stopped or stayed he, but with mine, O lord or lady, perched above my chamber door, perched upon a bust of Pallas just above my chamber door, perched and sat, and nothing more. Then this ebony bird beguiling my sad fancy into smiling, by the grave and stern decorum of his countenance it wore. "Though thy crest be shorn and shaven, thou," I said, "art sure no craven, ghastly, grim, and ancient raven, wandering from the nightly shore. Tell me what thy lordly name is on the night's plutonium shore." Quoth the raven, "Nevermore." Much I marveled this ungainly fowl to hear discourse so plainly, though its answer little meaning, little relevancy bore, for what we cannot help agreeing that no living human being ever yet was blessed with seeing. Bird above his chamber door. Bird or beast upon the sculpted bust above his chamber door, with such a name as Nevermore. But the raven sitting lonely on the placid bust spoke only that one word, as if his soul in that one word he did outpour. Nothing farther than he uttered, not a feather then he fluttered, till I scarcely more than muttered, "Other friends have flown before. On the morrow he will leave me, as my hopes have flown before." Then the bird said, "Nevermore." Startled at the stillness broken by reply so aptly spoken. Doubtless, said I, what it utters is its only stock and store, caught from some unhappy master whom unmerciful disaster followed fast and followed faster till his songs one burden bore, till the dirges of his hopes that melancholy burden bore of never, nevermore. But the raven still beguiling all my sad soul into smiling, straight I wheel the cushioned seat in front of bird and bust and door. Then upon the velvets sinking, I betook myself to linking fancy unto fancy, thinking what this ominous bird of yore, what his grim, ungainly, ghastly, gaunt, and ominous bird of yore meant in croaking nevermore. This I sat engaged in, guessing, but no syllable expressing, to the fowl whose fiery eyes now burned into my bosom's core. This and more I sat divining, with my heart at ease reclining on the cushion's velvet lining that the lamplight gloated o'er, but whose velvet violet lining with the lamplight gloating o'er she shall press, nevermore. Then, methought, the air grew denser, perfumed from an unseen censer, swung by angels whose faint footfalls tinkled on the tufted floor. Wretch, I cried, thy God hath lent thee, by these angels he hath sent thee, respite, respite, and nepenthe from thy memories of Lenore. Quoth this kind nepenthe, and forget this lost Lenore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Prophet, said I, thing of evil, prophet still, if bird or devil, whether tempter sent, or whether tempest tossed thee here ashore, desolate yet all undaunted, on this desert land enchanted, on this home by horror haunted, tell me truly, I implore, is there balm in Gilead? Tell me, I implore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Prophet, said I, thing of evil, prophet still. Hang on.
Mm-hmm.
Nope, yep, that's right. If bird or devil, by that heaven that bends above us, by that God we both adore, tell this soul with sorrow laden, if within the distant Aidenn, it shall clasp a sainted maiden whom the angels named Lenore, clasp a rare and radiant maiden whom the angels named Lenore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Be that word or sign of parting bird or fiend, I shrieked, upstarting, get thee back into the tempest and the night's Plutonian shore. Leave no black plume as a token, or that lie thy soul hath spoken. Leave my loneliness unbroken. Quit the bust above my door. Take thy beak from out my heart, and take thy form off my door. Quoth the raven, nevermore. And the raven, never flitting, still is sitting on the pallid bust of Pallas just above my chamber door. And his eyes have all the seeming of a demon that is dreaming, and the lamp's light o'er him streaming through his shadow on the floor. And my soul from that shadow that lies floating on the door shall be lifted nevermore.
Oh my God.
So you may or may not be able to tell that is the first time I have ever read that poem in its entirety.
So as it being your first time, what do you think?
I understand why it's a classic.
Mm-hmm.
100% I understand why it's a classic. I think that this is one of those places where current English and how it's taught in schools has failed me,
Mm-hmm.
because there's some words in here I don't know, and there's some expressions I'm not quite sure I properly grasp the meaning. But the beautiful thing about the poem is that even with missing some of the words and some of the phrases, the overall tone and the overall message and the story is still there.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the entire thing is a the entire thing it rhymes over a protracted scale. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Not every line rhymes, but
Right.
if you wait, the rhyme eventually comes.
Yeah.
And sometimes it skips a line or two.
Yeah.
But it always gets to back to the rhyme, which is very good.
But what I love is how it's dripping in symbolism.
Of course.
And I mean, you get so many different things, especially his word usage for things like how he was talking about the censer and the angels walking on the carpet, and you get this entire idea that basically this whole thing is he was really in love with this person named Lenore, and basically he's now all isolated and stuff, and he's having visions of his impending death.
I'm not sure if I would agree that it's visions of his impending death. I think what he's more so envisioning is his soul's consigned doom to forever be in this state of dread and loss.
Mm-hmm.
So he's not so much he's not so much seeing the death of his body as he is the death of his soul.
Right. Yeah. Which is one.
I stood there wondering, fearing, doubting, dreaming dreams no mortal ever dared to dream before. This line explains the poem. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I agree.
Yeah. Because in the beginning part, he talks about how while I nodded, nearly napping.
Mm-hmm.
It already establishes, hey, he was sitting there drifting off to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
So basically anything else that happens after that could possibly be happening. Yeah.
Correct. Which is really interesting because this situation is implausible but not impossible. So we don't know that he's dreaming.
Right.
But the entire thing does have this. It feels like one of those existential dread nightmares.
Mm-hmm. It has a slightly surreal quality to it.
Right. And because the only thing the Raven says is nevermore, and dreams often have a lot of repetition in them. When they're dreams that, it's a nightmare, there's often that aspect of repetition.
Yeah.
And he talks of how the crow leers at him like a demon.
Yeah.
And then he talks of the shadow on the floor. all of these things using these hard-hitting symbolic phrases and expressions to steep us as far into the existential dread as possible.
Mm-hmm.
It's easy to see why it's a masterwork.
Yeah, and I like how he talked about the Raven's countenance being at war. Basically, he's staring at him confused, like, what's your problem, man? Basically. But
oh, what's wrong,
it's
girlfriend?
like, it's like, oh, what happened, man? You know, but
Here moping over the loss of Lenore, here to stay forever trapped, never to see anything beyond thy chamber door, trapped for here, nevermore.
Oh man, but a way to say that someone looks confused.
Mm-hmm.
Their countenance was at war. I love that.
Yeah, it is
so
good.
Much. It's just like, oh.
And see, here's one. Let's take this for example. But the raven sitting lonely on the placid bust spoke only that one word, as if his soul in that one word he did outpour. So first of all, there's a great flow there. I absolutely love the flow of those two lines together.
Mm.
And he says, as if in that one word his soul he did outpour. That one word, as if his soul in that one word he did outpour.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, well, like we've been saying, that adds to that air of existential dread and surrealism. It's for a raven to just say that one word.
Yeah.
And just be, we all know how ravens sound when they speak.
Yeah.
There's that bird cawing to it.
Mm-hmm.
To only say that one word, nevermore.
Yeah.
And then it goes on. Nothing farther than he uttered, not a feather than he fluttered, till I scarcely more than muttered, other friends have flown before, on the morrow he will leave me, as my hopes have flown before. Then the bird said, nevermore. And so what we get from that is that Poe thinks that this specter will leave him.
Right.
Poe thinks that eventually he will be free.
Right. Well, or hopes.
But then the raven says, nope. You fucked. You got me for life.
Like, you're stuck with me, buddy. Oh, parallel this with the previous story prologue.
They do sort of complement each other in a sort. They do, don't they? Might have even thought right.
Yeah. Tonally, definitely.
And then I want to bite into this end part a little bit too. The raven never flitting, still is sitting on the pallid bust of Pallas just above my chamber door. And his eyes have all the seeming of a demon that is dreaming, and the lamplight o'er him streaming throw his shadow on the floor, and my soul from out that shadow that lies floating on the floor shall be lifted nevermore. And so that's a huge contrast to that line that I just read, that stanza that I just read.
Yeah.
And so in the course of the poem / story, we get that he goes from having a potential for hope, goes from having this, maybe things will get better, to being consigned to oblivion, essentially. And man, that's powerful.
Yeah.
Man, that's powerful. Yeah.
Because it's almost like, is he hoping that all things will get consigned to oblivion, including himself?
I don't think there's any one line in the poem that supports that idea directly, but you could certainly infer it based on the state of mind of the narrator.
Yeah.
What I would like to know is what the Raven was thinking.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yeah.
what I would like to know.
Yeah. Yep. He was like, look, man, I'm drunk and I'm in someone else's subconscious. I can't be held responsible for my actions. I'm just kidding.
And with that expert analysis from our Living Archive,
yeah.
This has been Rebel Poet Society.
Yeah. Right.
So,
Oh my goodness.
we don't have any new comments, and I don't think there's anything else I need to. We kind of lingered on that as I sat there meditating, grasping at my mind's threads like I never had before, while Caitlin sat there, cheerful yet weary that I might fall off, stumble back into the abyss as I had before. And I smirked into the camera and with a wink in my eye said, "Nay, not I, nevermore."
And everyone else out here is like, I have to sit in front of a computer screen for like 30 minutes.
I do it all for the crowd, baby.
Oh my God.
We're going to tell you guys about some things and some stuff. So, yeah, it's time for All right. Today on AuthorTube News. So, Team Adventurous has begun subscribing to authors' newsletters so that you don't have to.
You're welcome.
In a most recent update from Jenna Moresi. Yeah, I got this email February 21st, 24th. Excuse me, I can't word. We find out that she has, quote, started rumors, which are true because she created them. Stuff, Jenna. She is working on a new book, a super secret book, a super mega secret super project secret book. See, it even says confidential, top secret, confidential right here.
Yeah, which that could be the title of the book. And that would be really funny.
It's not the Savior's Army, she writes. I mean, I'm also writing that book, but there's a second book, a secret book. Well, it's less of a secret now that you know about it, but that's the kind of, but that's kind of exciting, right? We're partners in a clandestine affair or something like that. Whatever, it's fun. Sure, if you say so. We also find out further up in this email that she was part of a writing summit put on by Pro Writing Aid. So if you like Jenna and you think that she's not a complete artard, which most people don't because it's kind of deniable, it's kind of undeniable that she isn't.
Right.
Literally, there are words coming out of my mouth.
Words and things.
She did a fantasy writers week with Pro Writing Aid. So that might be worth going and checking out. The time has passed, and I don't know if it's archived, but it probably is.
Most likely. And there are people like V.E. Schwab and stuff on there too, so that's cool.
Now, there we go. Now, in other news, iWriterly is still M to the A to the I in between the M and the A. Fucking missing. However, if you sign up to her newsletter, you do get these free resources Isn't that fun?
Yeah.
How to format your manuscript for submission, she means to a literary agent. Querying checklist, again, if you're querying agents. Book marketing checklist, if you're self-publishing. Self-publishing checklist, that one's self-fucking-explanatory.
Yeah.
Will Megalator ever come back? Is iWriterly doomed to becoming an archive channel? Will my butthole ever stop itching? Find out in future installments of AuthorTube News. My butthole doesn't actually itch. I just needed something to say there. All right, we have ran really, really long, so
we have run.
We will make this next one a short one, but I said I was gonna do it.
Yeah,
Gonna do it.
Yeah. Do you think the reason why Nikki and Lauren are tears because they caught wind that there would probably not be any gay sports tonight?
Maybe. I don't know how they would have found out unless you leaked it to them.
No, I didn't say anything. You guys, where are you?
Caitlin, you can't bully the audience for not.
No, I'm not. Look here, man. We get on Mason.
We do. Well, he's part of Team Adventurous, so that's different.
Well.
Okay. Anyways, we're gonna do a little impromptu improv in a segment that we call.
How would you describe that?
So, if this is your first time here or your first time seeing this segment, the basic concept is this. Someone gives me a phrase that's poetic, and I make it, and I explain it mundane. Someone gives me something that's poetic, and someone gives me something mundane, and I make it poetic. I can't word today. Maybe I'm going to fail this time. Who knows?
No.
The audience is more than welcome to throw out suggestions. Again, give me something you think is poetic, like a waterfall, or a sunset, or a wolf chasing down its prey in the dead of winter so that it can survive another cold night.
Yeah.
Or you give me something mundane, like paying a parking ticket, wiping your ass, etc. Poetic. We'll wait a whole 15 seconds here. I'm just gonna, Caitlin, go ahead and start thinking of something to give me if the audience doesn't give me something in the comments.
Okay.
And I'm going to figuratively rev my engine here.
Okay. Freshly fallen snow.
Freshly fallen snow. Okay. The weather was 25 degrees Fahrenheit. Pressure was in the low bar zone as snow began to fall from our very overcast sky. It is blanketing the city currently and is expected to continue through the night. People are advised to stay the fuck out of the snow because why the fuck would you go out in the snow? Furthermore, children are advised not to play in it or have any fond memories of winter in any way, shape, or form. They will only serve as stale disappointments to you in your adult years. Partying is all we know of heaven. Well, that's very poetic. Partying is all we know of heaven. Now, I'm curious, what do you mean, like, as in when you're being born, or as in when people are? I'm going to need a little bit more context here. A little more context here.
Be like, okay, are we talking about entrance or exit or both? You could do both just to be safe.
Entrance or exit? Both. Are you talking about buttholes?
Always. No, I'm just kidding. Partying.
As much as I would like to pretend that that is what Miriam meant, no, I don't think she. Both the beginning and end of life. Okay, so to mundanely explain the beginning and the end of life. All right.
Yes.
Birth, the physical process by which one human being is expelled from the body of the mother through a series of muscular contractions. Typically, but not always, the child will crown out of the cervix and then the opening of the vagina into whatever birthing medium is receiving the child, whether it be tub, table birth, standing birth, etc. Ending of life. Souls, if they exist, would typically proceed towards heaven at the end of life when death is taking place. The body begins to shut down in varying order depending on exact cause of death. But inevitably, systems will shut down one by one. The brain, always last. The pineal gland will dump all of its DMT, flooding the brain, and you will see the light. Okay, Kaylin, give me something mundane.
Okay.
Give me something mundane to make poetic.
Something mundane to. Oh, okay. Being on hold with a bill collector.
Okay. As I sit here contemplating the hard wood, the lines and the polish shining like they've never shined before, I hear the elevator music coming through the speaker, irritating like a gleam in my eye from a science beaker, as it stores my memories and my patience before crashing to the floor. So I sit here on the line, consigned, waiting in time to speak to a man who I most despise, a bill collector, nothing more. And finally, after being on hold for far too long, waiting through the virtual lines and throngs of people who were in the line before, the man says to me, "Is your name Zach Pieper?" And I say, "It is now and always has been before." Very good. I'm here to collect a debt, and everything I say to you will serve that purpose promptly. And I said, of course it would be promptly, because this kind of thing has not yet been handled before. And so the man says, how would you like to make your payment? And I reach for my wallet and I say, I wouldn't. Please explain this. Please explain the debt that you say I owe you from a transaction we've had before. And the man says, yes, I have the date right here. The 25th of December, you went to a bar and bought $500 worth of beer for yourself and your friends and everyone who walked in because you were fucking fighting depression like never before. At least I would assume that based on the fact that from the time of 10 p.m. to 2 a.m., you did not yet walk out the door. And I said, yes, I remember that night, the 25th of December, where I walked in and for a subsequent 5 hours did not walk back out the door. That night, I got fucking drunk like never before. So I read my numbers on the card. I read them one right after the other in a sequence, 1 to 5 to 9 to 4. And I said, is this the one and only time you will accept this payment? And he said, I've not accepted it until now, nor before, and I could not accept it again if it goes through this time forevermore. And I said, very good, sir. So now we can squash this debt between us and consign it to history. And I will never allow you again to speak to me in this way that no one has spoken to me before, and I will think of you and the people holding your chains and this debt over my head. Nevermore.
Oh my god.
What? All off the top of my head, baby.
Oh my god.
As the great late Rush used to say, talent on loan from God.
Yes.
So, anyways, yeah, that's how I would describe that.
How would you describe that?
Oh my god. That was spectacular. Oh. Yeah. Oh my god. You're like, look, I'm just going to completely mirror the style that I literally was just introduced to only a few minutes ago.
I'm very effective at mimicry.
Yeah. So good. Anyway. Oh man.
Hey, who's it and what's it? All right, boys and ghouls. Today, as I promised, we're going to talk about writing and whether or not you can really teach it to all the boys and ghouls out there.
Mm-hmm.
Genius!
Except for when we're being idiots, folks.
Except for when we're being idiots. Yeah, man. So people, they're hard to teach. And some things, you can't teach a kangaroo to jump. It just knows. So writing, is that shit instinctual or can it be taught? Your thoughts on that, Caitlin?
Well, oh boy. Oh, for that game. So, I like this. Poets are the hierophants of an
unapprehended.
An unapprehended inspiration, Shelley. Yes, I agree. Yeah. But to get on with the subject of tonight, can you really teach anyone to write? I think, honestly, after having been in the industry as long as I have and all of the study that I've done, most people who are successful professional authors, most of the time, if you ask them, okay, hey, would you teach me how to do this? They're going to come back to you with, writing is not something that can necessarily be taught. However, it is something that you can learn.
Mm-hmm.
Which I know sounds weird.
At the surface. Surface. So, to elaborate on that, I think that something that people need to have an understanding of, let's get a little bit philosophical about this and take this all the way back to who we are and general dispositions as people. It is inarguable that you have a set of DNA when you're born, and that's going to be your DNA for the rest of your life.
Mm-hmm.
Your DNA predisposes you to certain things, certain types of thinking, certain chemical balances in your brain, and these things affect your behavior and are a framework that you as a person get built from as you progress through life. And so some people have a natural disposition to language skills, and high disposition for language skills predisposes you towards being a good writer.
Mm-hmm.
So in that sense, all the best writers are born. Okay. That's one solid argument that can be made towards saying you can't teach people to write, you can only learn. So as someone with educational materials on my channel that advise people on how to write. Like I have an entire playlist, not playlist, excuse me, I have an entire series on world building that's in the Writing 101 playlist. But we can take examples like world building, okay? And we can sit and talk until we're blue in the face about all of the aspects of world building. And we can get into the nitty-gritty of how each individual person does it and discuss techniques, and we can as an individual absorb the theory and ethos of how 10 or 100 different authors world build. But then if you don't actually have the ability to articulate your world in an interesting way, it doesn't matter how much building you've done in your head. It doesn't matter. Like, here's a good example of this to pick on one of the classics. H.P. Lovecraft.
Yeah.
You can read his. I'm currently working my way through this, and the first story is the one on the cover, The Mountain of Madness. And there's so much descriptive language, pages and pages and pages of just describing this one thing. And it's like, okay, so I see in your head you did a fucking unholy amount of world building and detailed it down to the texture of each individual body part. Okay, that's great. That's great. Can you summarize it, please? Say it in a way that doesn't read like a fucking textbook. Like, I'm sorry, Lovecraft fans, but based on what I'm checking out so far, huge imagination, not a very good man as far as putting words together. Because he just explained everything in this dry, clinical long form. And the only reason that you keep reading is because what he's describing is so fantastical. But the language is, in my opinion, so dry. It's like someone fucking put a Triscuit in the oven at 400 for an hour and then bit into that Triscuit. So what you have to do as a writer is take that skill of whatever aspect of writing you're talking about. And you have to have the language skills to say it in a way that's compelling. And that is a skill that you could spend a decade trying to teach someone who has a dry, boring personality how to write in that interesting, articulate, fantastical way, and there's a good chance you'd still fail. Because some people do not have the capacity to become a good writer. And look, that's not a bad thing. Not everyone is going to be good at everything, and we as a community need to accept that and start telling people that. It doesn't make you elitist to say, look, kid, you're not cut out for this. When people give up on an Olympic weightlifting career because they realize they're never going to be able to get their body to get to that level, we don't call the community surrounding them elitists. We say that person couldn't hack it. Same thing with so many other things in life. But yet for some reason, when you look someone in the eyes and say, look, I don't think you're ever going to be a good writer, it's considered like taboo and mean and elitist. And it's like, no, I'm just being honest. I could be wrong. And you should always be willing to admit that you could be wrong. But sometimes you're right.
Yeah. Well, because I think part of it, nothing against Triscuits or anything.
I hate Triscuits. What are you talking about? Everything against Triscuits. Weakness for life.
It's like, why did you decide to make crackers out of wicker?
Right? Why did you?
Like, who came up with this idea?
To deep fry dog hair and make it a cracker.
Oh my god.
hate trivia.
Oh man. But I think part of the issue comes from the fact that so many people have been convinced by people like Amazon that somehow they can follow a formula or whatever and pump out stuff really quick, and that there is some kind of quantifiable, I don't know, scientific whatever that you can use to hurry up and pump out a book. And I've been told so many times by so many people, when I was being a ghostwriter, other people were like, well, you must have the easiest job in the world. Like, I don't see why it's so hard. I could sit there and write stories all day too. I was like, yeah, you could, but would you do it very well?
Right.
Is the question. So, and I think the reason why a lot of people get so frustrated with a lot of how-to on different novel writing books, they get really frustrated with them because if they're actually valid information, the majority of the book is going to be telling you things like, well, for instance, the elements of style, okay? How you were talking about making sure that your voice is actually interesting in order to describe your world building. I agree with Stephen King's assessment. Writers can learn to be passable, decent, and perhaps good, but great writing is an inherent God-given gift. Yes, yeah. Exactly. And yeah, and so many people hate his book on writing. Why? Because it's not a how-to. It's basically a, hey, this is your little red wagon. You pull it how you want to. He says that so many times in the thing. But after, he'll give you a whole passage of stuff of, oh, well, this is what I read. This is what I thought was really cool about this person's style. Here's this life experience I had. Blah, blah, blah. And it reads nothing like a how-to for anything. It's just experiences and just personal thoughts and things that he likes to read and different excerpts of his writing. And then basically it's all followed up by, oh, well, you could do this or you could do that or whatever, but it's your little red wagon. You pull it how you want to. And basically, stop asking me all of these questions. Just fucking do it. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I've been waiting for you to say that this whole time. It's like, when is she going to get to the part that's like the quintessential piece of advice he gives?
Right, yeah, because the entire message.
His book.
Yeah.
We've had this conversation in private so many times.
I know, but I love his book so much. And he actually has an audio version now where he narrated it. So it's even better. So it's like, yes, I'm getting the advice straight from King himself. But
straight from the old dilapidated lesbian.
What?
I'm sorry, that's how that dude's looking these days. Looking like wrinkly ball sack.
Well, I mean, hey, he's had to channel lots of
oddly effeminate.
Well, he's had to channel lots and lots of creativity. So I mean, just
and cocaine.
Yes, yeah, yeah, and scope apparently because
scope because it tastes
But see, yeah, I mean, that's like the majority of the shit that's in that book is stories like that. And, but you still somehow felt like you were imparted some kind of wisdom.
Right.
Even from little things like that.
Well, okay, so we established the God-given thing. So let's explore that a little bit. Let's say you are a God-given talent. That doesn't necessarily mean you're ever going to find your talent. Something I think we need to talk about in our society more is the fact that you need to kind of sample as many things as you can and really get outside your comfort zone and try new things, as many new things as you can, because that's really the best way you can find what you're good at and what you're passionate about and what your purpose in life is. Because if you don't sample something, you'll never know whether or not you're good at it or whether or not you like it. And a lot of the time, the things that you become really good at are things that you like doing. That's pretty routine. You don't necessarily have to become good at things you like. You might suck at something but still like doing it. But the point stands, if you like doing something, typically you're going to get better at it. So we need to encourage people to sample things. And here's where we circle back to King and learn from the masters in that craft.
Yeah.
And what King's book is a documentation of his own journey, like Kaylin was just illustrating. And there's value to be had in analyzing the journey and the internal dialogue of masters of old. Because then you can see the thought processes and you can see the connections they make. And I would argue that for someone who doesn't have the God-given gift and they are trying to learn to become a good writer, because for some reason that's what they have a passion for, even if they don't have that inherent God-given gift, I think for that person, the best thing they could do is study the actual works of all of the previous masters and see the common threads that run through those stories. Because the fact of the matter is, for someone who doesn't have the gift, really, really convincing mimicry is as good as you're going to get.
Yeah. And with that, kind of like Lion said, they can learn to be passable, decent, and perhaps good, but they're not ever going to be great. So, I mean, if you are okay with settling, I mean, it's just something that you want to do to pay the bills, I suppose. I mean, that is okay. But, it's, I think it's called Writing the Breakout Novel, and it was by Donald Mass. And his entire thing was, even though it was written as sort of a how-to, the whole thing was basically, you already know what it is you need to do. So here's just basically all of the things that you could or couldn't do, but really just apply ass to chair, because you already know what it is that you're meant to be doing. So just do it. And he also went further to say, basically to summarize it, that anybody that tells you that there is any kind of a magic bullet formula, or that they have a precise, here's how to write the most prolific story ever, anything like that, they're bogus. And basically you're going to be following their, creativity and everything, and basically just peddling whatever it is, ideas that they came up with, and not actually exercising your own originality.
Right. And to branch off of that a little bit, there's something that happens in writing that makes the difference between stuff that's fast food fiction, right to market stuff that's just a dopamine high, and stuff like Lord of the Rings that transcends time. And what that is does the book have that secret ingredient where it becomes greater than the sum of its parts? Well, what are the parts of the book? Characters, plot, prose, message and symbolism, how original the concept is. All of those things are parts of the book. But when the parts all seamlessly interlock, all of them line up just so, and all of them complement each other, we end up with this exponential effect. And like I said, the book becomes greater than the sum of its parts. Yeah. And that's what great writers, they have an instinctual ability to do that. And it almost defies explanation in any kind of concise terms, because the way to do that isn't going to be the same in any two books. Yeah. It's going to be a case-by-case thing that you have to do. And how do you tell someone, well, you have to make your characters fit the setting? What do you mean? Well, they have to act like they're actually in that setting. But okay, so that gives you a little bit of an idea. But how do you decide how Joe is going to look at a rat every morning that's there for some reason on the sidewalk every morning when he's walking to work? How do you decide what Joe's relationship to that rat is going to be? Or how do you properly pick out what animals are living in that forest over there? Maybe there's no deer left in that forest because some psycho group of rednecks ran through there one summer and just shot everything they could find without a permit.
Right.
Where do you get these little nuggets that are, that make up the greater whole of your world, and how do you decide which nuggets to throw in? And how do they all contribute towards the greater amplification of the story? And it's those writers who there's nothing or very little in there that isn't absolutely pivotal to being in there. And everything that's in there works off something else that's in there. And everything interlocks. And like I said, it all comes together seamlessly, and it all becomes a thing that's greater than the sum of its parts. That's what truly great writing is. And yeah, how do you teach someone to make Joe looking at that rat every morning when he's walking to work relevant to Joe saving the world from nuclear war?
Yeah.
Well, you would have to spend an entire book drawing the thread and make it, and there's a lot of subtext that would need to happen.
Yeah.
And you would have to be very clever with some of your symbolism. And you just couldn't, I could spend hours doing that lecture, and there's still something that some people might not get. Because how do you explain how to build a rocket ship starting with the nuts and bolts?
Yeah, you don't. I mean, unless you're talking to, a rocket scientist, they're probably not going to understand what you're saying. And that's another thing too, to kind of reference screenwriting just a little bit. Well, thank you. But to reference screenwriting just a little bit, there is a pretty prolific screenwriter. Her name is Pat Verducci, and she did a whole talk on how writing can't be taught. Now, she wasn't doing it in the sense of like being elitist or whatever, but basically she was saying that it's not necessarily a skill that can be taught, like you were saying, trying to explain the building of a rocket ship with its nuts and bolts. Basically, it's something that someone can learn inherently through practical application of trial and error yourself.
Right.
Because writing is very instinctual. Because it's something that's creative, and if you try to interrupt it too much with mechanism, it just spoils the whole thing, and it's just it's a burnt Triscuit, essentially. So I would have to say that no, writing is not a skill necessarily that can be taught. However, it can be learned. And a good place to start learning, I'm going to recommend, and Stephen King also recommended this too, and my previous instructors when I got started doing this back when I was 14, The Elements of Style by Strunk and White is very good, because they also talked about what you were talking about, how it's important to have purpose with everything that you write, because they talked about how it's very important to make sure that you do not have wasted words or wasted sentences in a paragraph or wasted elements of story, as long as you understand that there is a purpose, a place for everything and everything in its place. Your story will remain original, vigorous, and precise. And that is actually, I think, aside from originality, what was it? Creativity, intellect, and I say it all the time. What is the thing I say all the time? It's,
creativity, intellect, agency?
No, it's what Oscar Wilde used to say all the time. A book can either be good or bad. It can just be well or poorly executed, depending on the level of intellect, creativity, and oh my God.
Are you
anyway, I'm having the hugest brain fart. Anyway, yeah, level of yeah, basically if you level of intellect, creativity, and skill. That's what it was. Yeah.
It didn't come up in Google when I tried to.
Well, yeah, because it's in the transcript of his trial. But yeah, level of skill, intellect, and creativity. Yeah, I had them out of order. So anyway, but yeah, level of skill, intellect, and creativity. Those are really the only things that you need. Is just oh, I couldn't see. But yeah, so yeah, if you want to write great fiction, oh no. So yeah. So if you want to learn how to write great fiction, do it with purpose. Be yourself, and get good.
Get good.
Yeah.
Scrubs. So anyways, this kind of highbrow discussion, goes on every Saturday night right here.
That's right.
Live for you guys to participate in. And that's why
You are a genius.
So look, it's been a great time, everyone. I hope you enjoyed it. Come back next week. Hit that sub button if you want to support us. We write books. We sell merch. It's all down in the description. You guys have a great night. Take care of yourselves. Be well.